Mr. Mayor. The council met in closed session and consider the first of the two items for closed session regarding the request for defense and indemnity by Councilmember Rule. No reportable action was taken on that item. The second item regarding the Habitat for Humanity project is continued to after the regular meeting or perhaps another day. Thank you.
Hey. Okay. All right. Okay.
That habitat is that we are.
Did I get the numbers wrong?
No.
No, we're going to meet after
The
we conclude the public hearing.
after we conclude this hearing with the two items in the public, then we will go back into closed session on the Habitat for Humanity. You will not have to stay for that.
Correct.
I appreciate you waiting, and I want to be very cognizant of that. Okay. So, ending of the closed session, opening of the public session. Thank you for coming to the Tuesday, February 4th special meeting. Let us start with a roll call.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Gilman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lang.
Here.
Councilmember Rule.
Here.
Councilmember Whitman.
Here.
Councilmember Mang.
Here.
Mr. Montgomery, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, Mayor. Welcome, community. Please rise as you are able. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Passes. And then now we will go to public comments. Hold on one second. Okay. So let's start with Raul Alvarado, and then Peter Roming, and then Shannon Richard. Raul? Okay.
Oh, public comment. No public comment.
I know.
We don't have general.
We
Mr.
usually.
Mayor, if I could-
Yes, please go ahead.
So typically the city does not take general public comment at special meetings.
Right.
But I will note on this agenda, there is an item for general public comment.
I did
so
see
we
that.
should take general public comment.
And I'm inclined to do that anyway. Now, I want to make sure, Mr. Alvarado, that this is not about issues 1 or 2, something different than that. Is that correct?
This is about the homeless encampment.
So this is one thing that I actually wanted to say to folks, which is, just so you're clear, when we take up the item on the cost model, that has nothing to do with a location. I hope that's clear.
I'm not going to talk about the cost model.
Okay, you're not here to talk, you're talking about the location.
Nope.
Oh, something else.
I'm going to talk about the project.
Okay, bring it on.
Is that okay?
Oh, no, of course it is. No, what I was trying to clarify is, as we talk about the cost model, that's going to be very specific. Okay,
No, sorry.
go right ahead,
I'm
please.
not gonna, okay. So
Thank you.
He's talking about
I'm Raul Alvarado, a resident of
homeless
Ojai.
encampment.
I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you tonight. My focus is beyond the selection of the site, which many believe to be deeply flawed. While I respect the effort being made to address homelessness, I want to highlight critical concerns, chief among them the lack of structure, long-term planning, and transparency in the current approach.
Okay.
The decision carries significant risks. Other cities have rushed forward without structured planning, so increase homelessness, financial strain, and reduce public safety. If we make the wrong choice now, we would create long-term damage that will be difficult and costly to reverse. A poorly implemented plan will fail to solve the problem and will make it worse, thus increasing burdens on law enforcement, emergency services, and local businesses while reducing overall community well-being. Public comments, I believe, are being heard, but many in our community feel ignored, as their input is mere formality. Leadership is about making the right decisions. When the council moves forward without directly addressing citizens' concerns, the trust erodes. This lack of transparency breeds frustration and division within the community. The best leaders adapt with new information as information emerges. Sticking with a flawed plan simply because it has been decided is not leadership, it's stubbornness. A policy that is rushed and poorly conceived will not just reflect on this council today, but will define Ojai's future for years to come. We have an opportunity to do this the right way. Let's avoid a decision that we may regret. Let's take a 30-day reassessment period, not to undo the work that has been done, but to refine it with expert insights and genuine community engagement. This is about ensuring success versus reversing course. There's a responsible way forward that acknowledges the effort made while still refining the details for a more effective solution. We need a plan that actually works well in practice, one that addresses housing, services, and long-term stability in a way that benefits everyone. Ojai can be a model for other cities, but only if we lead with care, foresight, and strategy. Instead of ignoring potential failures, let's acknowledge the responsibility we have to get this right. Other cities have learned the hard way that by rushing forward with unstructured planning leads to serious setbacks. We don't have to repeat these mistakes. Would you like haste to define our legacy? Instead, let's build a solution that is effective, sustainable, and benefits Ojai. Thoughtful planning, transparency, and public engagement will ensure that when we act wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarado. And not for you, but in general, just something I will bring up is that if you can, mark your calendars for February 24th in this room at 5:30. And what we'll be doing is having a town hall with help of Ojai, the county public health, Dignity Moves, and others. And the goal of that meeting, not to decide anything, there will be no decisions that night. It will be simply asking questions that I have had, many of you have had, questions like, what does the program look like? What services are offered? What are other places that do things like this? How are they successful? So it's a general inquiry, trying to bring in civil discourse around the questions that are being asked. So a lot of them are here tonight, but please mark your calendars. I think it's going to answer a lot of questions I have. So next, Peter Roming, Shannon Richard, and then Jim Churchill. February 24th, Monday evening in this room, 5:30 to 7:30. And it's okay if you forget it. We'll definitely publicize it. I'm going to tell everybody I know. Yes, sir.
All right, dear council members, my name is Peter Roming and I live in Ojai. Funding opportunities that are mentioned in the cost model for the cabin village are just speculation, and I quote.
Sir, may I just ask you one thing? If it's about that item, would you wait until we get to that part, or is it about something else?
Well, this is about the cost model.
Yeah, so if I can, let me ask you to speak when we get to that item on number 2.
Okay, all
But
right.
hang out, hang out. We're getting there.
Okay, all right.
Thank you so much. Okay, Shannon Richard, Jim Churchill, and then Gail Benden Churchill.
Okay, let me get this together. Hello, Council. My name is Shannon Richard. I'm
Hello.
a resident of Ojai. And I wanted to say that my family and I are not opposed to the creation of the cabin village, and in fact support the concept, but the proposed location in the middle of a residential community is the worst possible choice for many reasons. There are definitely safety concerns for our family. We have a 16-year-old daughter and a son, and although we are hearing there will be a paid security in the area, the fact that there needs to be a paid security validates our apprehension that sooner or later a safety issue will arise between residents and the cabin village and the immediate residential neighbors. It's a terrible idea to place the cabin village in direct proximity to families with children of all ages. Just like it's a bad idea to locate the cabin village in direct proximity to a school, the same applies to a residential community with children, There is no difference, and I could be argued that with a school, there are only safety concerns during school hours. However, in a residential community, there are safety concerns for children around the clock, with nighttime and darkness being our greatest concern. These are real and valid. Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
Something just happened to me.
No worries.
And I have to go get it again, so apologize.
Hang out, guys, so I could hear what she's saying.
I apologize, people.
That's okay.
In the residential community, there are safety concerns for children around the clock, with nighttime and darkness being the greatest concern. There are real and valid concerns, and anyone who feels differently has never been the parent of a child concerned for their safety. So what's the solution? Choose a new site. This is not in a residential area inhabited with families and children. Whether that be a commercial setting like Bryant Circle or an open space and agriculture setting, there are definitely better options available. Also, Andrew Whitman raised several valid objections that seemed to be ignored by the city manager and the other city council members when this location was first discussed. Why can't the cabin village be located outside the city limits where there are even more land available away from families and residential communities? And how about partnership with the Ventura County? This is a legitimate question, and that has not been answered. The original proposed site across Seafresh, Ojai was a bad idea. However, the latest proposal in the middle of a residential community is the worst idea.
Can you finish? Very briefly.
We don't understand why the rush is to ramrod the purpose site through, and believe more open and transparent process would benefit all residents of Ojai.
Thank you, Ms. Richard.
Thank you.
Jim Churchill, Gail Benden Churchill, and then Mary Kirby. Mr. Churchill.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, everybody. My name is Jim Churchill. I live on Eucalyptus Street between Signal and Lion. As a culture, we haven't yet decided to kill people for not having homes or for other kinds of problems that they have. And as long as we don't kill them, then they're here, they're with us, and we must work with them.
Hey, hold on. Like, I know it's so easy to want to jump on or jump against, but let's not. Okay, please go.
We have to work with them in such a way that since they're going to be with us, living amongst us, we should provide for them in a way that allows us, whoever we are, to live peacefully and productively with them, whoever they may be. So I've visited the proposed site, and it looks good to me. It is screened by large mature trees. It's an adequate size. It's close to services. The city owns it, which seems to me to be a financial plus. I'm in favor of moving forward with this existing site now and not casting about for some other as yet unknown site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Churchill. Gail Belden Churchill, Mary Kirby, and then Bill Miley.
Good evening.
Hello.
Gail Belden Churchill. So I wanted to start this out by saying I'm in favor of creating homes for our neighbors here in the Public Works Yard. I've been living in Ojai for over 50 years. I've been thinking a lot about sense of place and what that means, and how vulnerability requires often a radical sort of caregiving. For example, regarding place, I always know it's February when the acacia blooms. And perhaps the acacia's flowers brighten as they turn their thorny eyes toward the fact of my noticing them. We're all deeply connected, and it ties into the African concept of Ubuntu. I think of Bishop Buddy, and her recent plea for those who are marginalized by society to be shown mercy, to have a place at the table, to invite a radical caregiving outside the norms of who and what we tend to hold up. So my roots here are deep. My family knows Andy, Barclay Hope, and Don Belden. My grandson went to the charter school in Ventura. I worked at Local Hero Books with Bobby. I put on Buddhist groups. I worked at Laurel Springs School and Oak Grove School when homeschooling, when there weren't charter schools, and when homeschooling was, the students sent us work. There were no computers, so deep, deep, deep roots here. For years, I could afford to live here. And during the COVID time, I lost all my work. I was mindfulness educator at UCLA through the Mindful Awareness Research Center. lost my work. They went virtual. I thought, well, I'll move out of Ojai, because people at my age, you get a diagnosis, you get disabled, or you get priced out. You know, living wage is ridiculous compared to what the cost of living is here. So I became this, my story. And I'm highly educated. I have had amazing work. And I was looking at container units thinking, well, maybe I could live there. I could live at Lake Casitas. But I thought I'd move. And then I fell in love. And so I met a guy. And so then I had a home. And so why was I lucky? I don't know why I was lucky and got a home, but I got a home. And so I think of the stories that are like mine, and I think of dignity, and I think of kindness, and I think of mercy, and I think of companionship. And so I'm in favor of helping our friends move to homes in the public work yard.
Thank you, Ms. Churchill. Mary Kirby, Bill Miley, and then Ian Campbell.
Hi.
Hello.
My name is Mary Kirby. My husband and I have been residents of Ojai for 36 years. I'm a mother and a grandmother, and I'm also a daughter and sister to family members with mental health issues. I support housing for the homeless in Ojai. However, I oppose the proposed location of the Cabin Village off Signal and Montgomery Streets. In the last couple of years, many of the homeowners around City Hall have been sharing their neighborhoods with the temporary tent village. Many have spoken at these city council meetings describing safety problems such as property damage, a drug overdose, trespassers, to name a few. These accounts have resulted in a loss of safety and security for themselves and their families. Yet, the city is still planning and moving forward with the plans for a permanent Cabin Village site, 2 blocks in the same neighborhood. It's as if the council is turning a blind eye to the homeowners' concerns. I understand the humanitarian goal of helping others in need. However, how can any entity reconcile helping one group of people while hurting another? Where is the humanity in that? Our neighborhoods and Libby Park are the backbone of our city. They offer safety and solace to families within town and to visitors from out of town. I don't envy your position. Strong appeals are coming at you from 2 different perspectives on this issue. I simply ask that you slow down the process in order to find the right building site that creates a win for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kirby. Bill Miley and Ian Campbell.
Hello.
Hello.
At my age, I may not have a lot of time left. I want to request you don't require the public to wait over an hour for you to finish.
My apologies, Mr. Miley.
I'm
I know.
not through. Here's the funny part.
Okay.
To finish a closed session issue, which you didn't finish. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Miley. And touche. Ian Campbell.
Hello, good evening. My name is Ian Campbell.
Hello.
I came here this evening to voice my support for the Cabin Village project at the Public Works Yard. I know it maybe isn't a perfect site for many different reasons, but I think that it's an urgent issue and you should move forward with it in an appropriate manner. I think that as the City Council of Ojai, as any governing body, you're responsible for the people that you serve. And I think that with that responsibility, you have to realize that some people have different needs. You know, we have to take care of our elders. We have to take care of our children. We have to take care of people who are lacking food. We have to take care of people who are lacking shelter. So with that responsibility, while everybody has a right to come and speak at public comment, everybody has a right to talk on matters that public funding's used. Just understand that there's certain people whose need is a lot greater, and the people who are being impacted by this project that matter the most, in my opinion, are the ones who need the housing, the one who are requesting to have shelters built, not the ones who are concerned about, the safety of their children for the wrong reasons. Additionally, I'd like to say, while I support the Cabin Village project and building housing for those who are currently at Tent Town and the 30 units, don't forget that there are more people on the streets, that there are more people living out of their cars, and many more on the brink of financial disaster. You all know that there's a housing crisis, not just in Ojai, not just in California, not just in the United States, but around the world. But we have a responsibility to try our best to solve this crisis in every community and in our community. Ojai is a very wealthy community. I've actually never lived anywhere that had this much, obvious wealth. And I think the strength of our community should be measured on how we care for one another. No one should be without a home. No one should be without adequate shelter, adequate food. And I think it's ridiculous that there's millionaires and billionaires in our community who have second homes, people who come up to their second homes on the weekends only, and there's people who have no homes. That doesn't make sense in my mind. Life and governance should be based on morality and caring for one another. It shouldn't be, money doesn't matter. We're all human. We all deserve respect. We just need to care for one another and stop prioritizing individual wealth accumulation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Brad Stewart. Oh, sorry, I had the rain. My mistake. Please. No.
Thank you very much for
Yes.
allowing this. I had put my card in to speak. And
Okay. I probably misplaced it. Sorry about that.
That's quite all right.
Okay.
How are y'all? Yeah. You're not even halfway, are you?
Halfway what?
Done tonight.
Oh, that's okay.
No.
What else are we going to do?
Okay.
No, please, though.
Thanks for letting me here. My name is Bradley Smith, also known as Brad Smith. I live here on Blanche Street, arguably one of the closest neighbors to the current tent town, cabin village, or homeless encampment, whatever you want to call it. I'm in favor of the new site that's been looked at and has been studied for these people. It's a grand project to have the people here in Kent Hall parking lot, but it's just the wrong location. People are talking about noise, people are talking about crime, people are talking about safety. I got to tell you, the only reason I know they're there is because they walk up and down my street in front of my house going to the market. We don't hear noise. There have been no problems that I'm aware of and right around my little neighborhood. I know there was an issue not long ago between two tent town inhabitants. That happens around town. I don't think that community is really any different from the rest of the community. They're not miscreants, they're not scofflaws, and those that were aren't there anymore. Some of the things I've been hearing are just out and out wrong. I lived there, I'm speaking from experience. Where the intended place to be in the City Hall maintenance yard, surrounded by vegetation, there's one person who's going to be directly impacted by that. One. I feel sorry for him. But I think he's got a great view nonetheless, over top and out. And I know that things will be done to make it aesthetically pleasing, visually. So I'm in support of the new location that's being proposed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. No need to clap. Any comments online, Mr. Montgomery?
Yes, Mayor, we have one raised hand from Cassandra.
Thank you.
Cassandra, you may unmute and speak.
Hi, I live right across the street from Brad, and I can agree with everything that he said. Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
I agree. I think when the encampment first, started, it was a little bit, there were a few people in there that were causing a problem. And I feel like in the last, 6 months or a year, I feel like with the security and with the certain people being removed. And I feel like it's gotten to be very civilized. And, you know, my friend had their car parked outside my house the other day with the window down all night long, and nobody took anything out of the car. I've had packages, you know, the Amazon leaves out on the sidewalk out for a day or two and nobody takes them. So yeah, I've been really pleased with like how they've really made sure that it's, you know, civilized and that everyone's behaved and taken care of. And in general, yeah. So I, just to be clear, do support the Public Works Yard. I'm a longtime Ohioan. I used to live on South Ventura, and I know that lot well. And it is very concealed, and it does seem to be the right topography, close to town, close to the police station. So yeah, I know that this money doesn't last forever. I think we have like 6 months. And if we don't have a plan, that money is going to vanish. So we have an amazing opportunity to spend state funds that we worked really hard to get. And we've spent, I think, is it a year or two now, deliberating on this topic and looking, Ben Harvey working so hard to find a site that was suitable, given all the conflicting concerns. And nothing is going to be absolutely perfect. And it's a tough situation to begin with. And so we're just trying to find the best place. And I think this is what we have, and I think we should move forward. So
Thank you.
thanks.
Next, raise a hand. We have Ashanti, followed by Jean.
Thank you.
Shanti, you have the floor.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm speaking to you today from my home with a roof where I'm going to be dry and warm tonight during this blessed rain. I say this because this is a privilege that I carry with me, and I do not take this for granted. In a society with as many resources as we have people with second homes and empty rooms. I believe everyone should have access to their basic rights, which include housing, food, water, healthcare, education, and more. This is why I'm speaking today to voice support for the Public Works Yard as the site for Cabin Village. There is going to be opposition to any site, and I'm concerned that if the city decides to look into alternatives, we might miss the deadline to expend the funding, and we might lose this incredible miracle of an opportunity that the city has been granted. I personally have prepared and served food for Tent Town many times, and I've had nothing but good experiences with the residents of Tent Town. They are extremely kind and appreciative, and I always have great conversations with them. In many comments in opposition to the proposed Cabin Village site, I hear that people are concerned about violence. A few residents have spoken before me, so they have themselves said that this has not been an issue. We have to put this rhetoric to rest. There is a serious vetting process at Tent Town, and we have heard before from prior speakers that people who have been accused of violence have not been allowed to stay at Tent Town. So we need to move forward with this amazing opportunity. We need to make sure this does not slip through our fingers. And we need to provide housing. I mean, this is just the beginning, right? We have people who are at the brink of losing their homes, as a former speaker said. And this is just the beginning. We need to make sure this happens. And so I'm in support of the current proposed site. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, raise hand we have is Jean. Jean, you have the floor.
Okay, I think I had to unmute. This is Gene Chiraga. I live across the street from the proposed site on South Ventura. And I'm represented, and a whole group of my neighbors are represented by a law firm that sent a letter 3 months ago to the city that explained why the Cabin Village site, Public Works site, is improperly zoned for residential use, and it has never been answered as far as I understand. I'm not going to recite everything in that letter, but basically the area where the Cabin Village is zoned is for a public or quasi-public use, and it does not include residential. And the letter points out that Ojai Municipal Code section 10-2.603 and 10-2.603 2601B are being ignored. The letter also points out, and this letter was 3 months ago and still hasn't been answered by the city. And the city has city council. It also pointed out that the community development staff has improperly, incorrectly argued that it's a public facility and therefore it's allowed in a quasi-public zone. However, again, the municipal code section 10-2.603 is being ignored. And the community development staff also incorrectly asserted that the project is a supportive housing project under Government Code 65650 at SEEK. And unfortunately, again, it's ignoring the fact that subdivision A of that same government code provides that supportive housing is a use by right in zones where multifamily and mixed uses are permitted. That's not permitted where the Cabin Village, the public works site, is. And it's disturbing to me that a letter that was sent to the city on November 5th, 2024, 3 months ago, that raised all these concerns is being ignored. City hasn't even addressed it. And as it's similar to the city basically falling on deaf ears on all the other issues that have been raised. And I don't understand how the city can justify just ignoring a letter from attorneys that represent its own constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. And I might remind everyone that there's going to be a planning commission meeting on Wednesday, February 19th, of which this will be heard, the second installment of that. So I encourage you to attend that. There'll be more information there. Mr. Montgomery?
Next raised hand we have is Mike. Mike, you have the floor.
Hi, Mike Donahue here. Hey, first I want to say happy birthday to Rosa Parks. She's in heaven.
Cool.
And she defined courage.
Yep.
So my name is Mike Donahue. I lived in Ojai for over 20 years with my family and 3 kids. I teach leadership and personal development at San Diego State University and other schools. I work on a lot of projects. I work with the incarcerated. I work with homeless. I work with the undocumented. I work with dreamers. I feel for the homeless, the incarcerated, anyone who's disadvantaged, or this class we call vulnerable. But the theme of my 3 minutes is really the city should unify, not vilify. There's more to that slogan. Last week, we heard a lot of proponents of the public works yards refer to the oppositions as people who wanted to, quote, kick the unhoused to the river bottom. Are you kidding me? Kick the unhoused to the river bottom? That's what the opponents to the public service yard is referred to. Another person said that they wanted to disperse the unhoused. I say, come on, people, let's find common ground. Let's not vilify. Let's unify. There's about 500 people that have signed a petition for the public service, public works yard, and about 500 against it. But there's common ground between them. Sadly, the heat is rising in this rhetoric, and it pains me. But you know what pains me even more? Is seeing someone that introduced himself last week by the name of Rebecca. Rebecca's from Maryland. She needs services. She needs help. It was so clear in that meeting. And I hope we're helping her. Then there was a gentleman named Tadeo. He was a young man who said, quote, I'm being framed for some crap. His cry also pained me, and I wasn't alone. So I say, try to bring it together in a common theme. And did you know that the city of Ventura and the city of Moore Park built dignified housing in industrial zones? Matt Levere actually told me that. The residents of some of them are working on turning the corner, and they're doing it well. So I say, let's unify with our common goals, both the opposition and the proponents of this site. We all want to help the people that need help. Let's find the right circle, the right place, maybe Bryant Circle or some other place that's acceptable, but no more vilification. Let's just try unification. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That's all, Mayor.
Okay, we will close the public comments for now. And let me go on to discussion item 1, the Ojai Cabin Village cost model. And I'll go to Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm actually going to pass this down to Mr. Alameda, who is providing the presentation and answering any questions you may have after that before you go to public comment. Mr. Alameda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Some good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Pleased to share with you the cost model that we've prepared for the future Cabin Village project. We'll walk through a PowerPoint here, and then also in the staff report on the last page, 5 of 5, is the cost model that I'll be referring to on item 1. Next slide, please. So tonight's report on the cost model of the future Cabin Village fulfills a request by the City Council that this come back and staff develop the cost model, so we're fulfilling that request. So actions for tonight is, first, we're asking for any feedback that the City Council has on the cost model and its components. And then we're also asking that you authorize the city manager to proceed with developing an agreement with the County of Ventura on future funding for the project. And I would like to note, in the audience joining us tonight, we have Kimberly Albers, who is with the County of Ventura, and she's the Homeless Solutions Director, and she has been involved in the development of this model and discussions of the future Cabin Village. So some of the questions that you may have on those agreements with the county and supportive services, she's here to answer, and probably will be able to do much better job of that than I on some of the services the county has to offer.
Okay.
Okay, next slide, please. So just to cover how we got here on the cost model and what the inputs were on developing it. This was not created in a silo with city staff. We collaborated with a number of other outside agencies that have deep knowledge and insight on developing these costs and operating these historically. A few I'd like to call out is the County of Ventura that we worked with on the behavioral health side and supportive services that they have. The help of Ojai, who is familiar with the client base that currently lives in Ojai Tent Town and also knows the case management services that will be needed for the future Cabin Village. We also have talked extensively with Dignity Moves, who has already put these projects online and operated them for a number of years and is aware of both the revenue opportunities and expenses associated with them. Dignity Moves currently operates over 10 of these sites. So they gave us quite a bit of insight on what these costs to operate. So with all these inputs from these different agencies that have operated a similar project model, this is how a lot of the cost and revenue assumptions were made. Also, we have operated Ojai Tent Town. We know the clientele, we know who lives there, and we know the services that they require. So the components I'll be covering tonight are fourfold. We'll be looking at operating revenues that the future Cabin Village could produce to offset the cost. We'll look at administrative expenses, maintenance expenses, and utility expenses. Next slide, please. Background, so this is going back to August of 2023. As you may recall, that spring and summer, we had a large homeless encampment that was spread across the 8 acres of the City Hall property. And it was addressed as a top priority. So the council had a goals and priority workshop. That was the top priority of the council to address that need. From that, you saw what is now referred to as Ojai Tent Town, where the city set aside funding and placed 30 wilderness tents in the Kent Hall parking lot to bring those people up out of the open space and into the parking lot. The city council did set aside money to do that, and Ojai Tent Town has been supported by the city's general fund. We were alerted by the County of Ventura, who we were working with, of a grant opportunity being offered by the state of California under the Encampment Resolution Funding Grant Program and they encouraged us to apply. And the county also did a lot of the heavy lifting on completing the application for us because they had extensive knowledge of the requirements of the grant. The city was successful, as you know, in receiving our full grant request to the amount of over $12.6 million that is for the future cabin village. So this is for the cost to both develop the site and is also there to offset the operational cost for a couple years. There are some components in the transitional part from Ojai Tent Town that we are covering, such as the resident steward model, that are being paid for with the grant. Okay, next slide, please. So this is largely definitional, just to understand what we're talking about and why the distinctions are important. So what Ojai Tent Town is now, this is in the eyes of the state. It's a transitional unsheltered encampment. It's intended to be a stopover from basically being on the streets, so those that might be living in their cars, under overpasses, in the parks. And it's a stopover to permanent supportive housing, which is what the new cabin village will be. The permanent supportive housing aspect, that's the future cabin village, and this provides what would be permanent housing with case management and supportive services to the residents. The two distinctions are important because the transitional unsheltered encampment, such as Ojai Tent Town, does not have revenue sources available or grant sources or other funding sources available. So continuing that model, the city would be supporting the cost of that in its entirety. Permanent supportive housing, there's a number of resources available on the revenue side from both collections of rent that can be collected, voucher programs that are administered by the county, and other programs offered by the state of California, which we'll touch on. So the distinctions are important. Next slide, please. So on the revenue side of the cost projection model, we looked at 5 primary sources of revenue that would be considered. The first is simply the interest income on the grant award. So this city received a couple months ago the full amount of the grant from the state, with the expectation that we'll spend it as we outlined in our grant application to build the project out and support the project. So the money has been received in full and has been and will be accruing interest. So that was one revenue source of the cost model. The second is Social Security revenue. I would like to point out, in the help of Ojai, many of the inhabitants of Ojai Tent Town are clients of Help of Ojai, and most do receive Social Security income and that can be paid towards rent. So that's not speculation, that is a known. The Voucher Assistance Program is a program offered by the county that we'll touch on. The County of Ventura is going to potentially be offering operational support, and then donations are a potential last source. And we'll get into all those more. Next slide, please. So to go into those 5 areas that are on table on page 5 of 5, here's how we arrived at the numbers that you see. The total bottom line operating revenue number is the $634,215. So the top line, you see, the top 2 lines actually are the interest income from the grant award. And it's broken up into 2 categories. So basically months 1 through 6, and then months 6 through 12. So at the end of that 6-month period, we're going to have to pay, per the guidelines of the grant, 50% of the development cost to Dignity Moves. So that principal amount will drop down. So the top line is accruing interest at what is currently the return on LAVE, which is the local agency investment fund. So it's an account that the money sits in with the state at the current rate of return. The interest income will actually be more than this. This is just looking at a year period. We received the grant money a few months prior to this. So this number, if anything, is less than what we will actually occur in interest income. So that's why it's broken down in 2 line items. And then the balance is what will remain for the additional 6 months after the developer's paid. And keep in mind, even after the developer's paid, we'll still have money left over, around $4 million, to support operations. So interest will even continue to accrue beyond 12 months. So the time window for interest to accrue on a portion of the grant award is actually 3 years. The number I've given you is simply 1 year. So the interest income in reality will be far exceed this. And you'll see a theme that all of these are very conservative numbers that I've provided you. Number 2 is the Social Security revenue. This was costed at only 20% of the units paying rent from Social Security. So as we know from the current residents of Tent Town, most do receive Social Security, and that goes back to the information provided to us by Help of Ojai. So with their Social Security income, 1/3 can be collected in rent. So that's where we arrive at the number of the $59,500 is from 20% of the cabin village paying rent derives from Social Security income. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the county's voucher program, otherwise known as Section 8. So we've spoken to Dignity Moves. These units will be able to be vouchered in a Section 8 program. So we've looked at what the county guidelines are. So when the county pays on a Section 8 unit, the 3 factors that they look at is what's the income of the family that's in the unit, what's the number in the family, and what's the number of rooms being rented. So at all of these, we looked at, obviously there are 1-bedroom units, and we looked at what would be paid for 1 participant. If there were some reason 2 participants, it'd be higher, but this is looking at 1. So it's the very baseline number that a Section 8 program would pay for a 1-bedroom unit. And again, we've applied in this model 20% of those units being under a voucher program. So with 20% of the units being under a voucher program, the revenue collected would be $142,060. So looking solely at rents, this model only builds in 40% of the units paying any rent to the city at all. We know in reality that number is going to be higher. So this is a more than conservative approach. Likewise, the County of Ventura's operating support. The state has recently passed SB 1, which we anticipate to get support from that source that will probably be administered by the county. The cost model builds in 0. So that's obviously more than conservative. The county has agreed when the funding comes available that they'll support the new project. And then last but not least is community support. Historically, the community has been very supportive of Ojai Tent Town. I know that all of you have very much witnessed that. Come down on any given day, there's someone bringing goods, clothing, food to assist those here. But if we wanted to have a donation program in place to offset, that's something that the city could do. So the cost model builds in $100 per month, which I think is more than reasonable and achievable. So those are the 5 revenue sources. That's how we came to those numbers in the cost model. Obviously, a very conservative approach to arrive at those numbers. Okay. Next slide, please. So just like the revenue projections were made with a very conservative approach, the same was done with the expenditure side. We basically looked at what's the most something could potentially cost us. So we're looking at a worst case scenario. On the cost side, we looked at 3 different areas: administrative expenses, maintenance expenses, and utility expenses. On the very top line, which is the largest amount, there are a number of items in here that we have contract proposals on. So it's not speculation of what that would cost. So when you look at those items that we have proposals on by the service agencies, the total of those costs is 56% of the bottom line number. So of the 629,000, 56% of that is known that we have proposals in hand of what those services would cost. Next slide, please. So as I just mentioned, on the administrative side, those are largely contract-based and known. So those are your services. If you go back to that attachment, page 5 of 5, this is the agreement with the help of Ojai for case management. We know what that's going to cost. This is the potential future agreement with the County of Ventura Behavioral Health. We know what that's going to cost. This is also on-site security that we've already been providing here. We know what that's going to cost. In the on-site security, I should mention that cost is not for full-time security, but it's as needed when we have things come up, and when things come up, if there's special events in town or other needs for security. The sheriff's directed patrol cost, we know what that costs. The sheriff's directed patrol is not to have a sheriff presence there at all times. It's when there's significant events and we want the sheriff's department to go. If we have an extreme weather event, we might want the sheriff's deputies to go in, make sure that everyone's safe. There may be other needs that arise. It's very close to the station, and even at end and beginning of shift, someone could swing by there. But this is not intended that they're going to patrol it every day. It's as needed if something arises, like the weather event or some other occurrence. Property insurance coverage, we've already talked to our insurance provider, California Joint Powers Insurance Authority, said, hey, this is what we're building. This is how many units it's going to be. This is where it's going to be placed. What would be the change to our annual premium? It's a cost we have in hand. So these are all costs that are known from the providers that will be providing. Next slide, please. I think someone's got a message out there.
Yep.
All right. So next are maintenance expenses that we want to go ahead and walk through. And again, we do have experience in this because some of these things we've provided at Ojai Tent Town. So there's a lot of knowns. And we also have the experience of Dignity Moves, who's operated this exact model in over 10 other cities. So they have shared a lot of insight on what it costs to provide these services. I do want to call out a few things on here just to provide a little clarification. Some of these, if you just look at them and glance and don't understand what's underlying them, may not make sense. So things as supportive services for food. At the future Cabin Village, we aren't providing a meal program, as we haven't provided one here. Food is a tool that we've used when we have special events. Maybe we have someone coming out from Ventura County Behavioral Health that wants to talk to the group. We'll provide food. It encourages more participation. So if someone's coming out from the medical group, Doctors Without Borders, we'll maybe provide food to help encourage people to come out. So these are usually events where you have a service provider. We'd like to engage more people. We'll provide food. And as you know, we have a coffee room. We provide coffee. We've had experience doing this. We've done it at Ojai Tent Town. We plan to transition it to the new Cabin Village. We know what that cost is. I would like to point out that the new project, as you know, will be all electric and solar, which will help on the underlying utility costs, but there will be some maintenance there as well. And then some of these other items are services that we provide now. So some on-site storage when we have turnover and we may have to store some things. We're already doing that now. We know what that costs. Various maintenance and miscellaneous repairs that we've already encountered. Next slide, please. All right. So on the utility expenses I mentioned earlier, we looked at a per unit cost on Dignity Moves across their projects, what it's cost to operate those. So that's where a lot of those were drawn from. We did build in some expenses for electricity. We're somewhat generous there because we do expect the solar to pretty much offset our electric cost. Internet services, we've already gotten a proposal of what that would be to provide, as we have for waste hauler as well, so also known. So those are the bottom line expenses. And then when we look at the bottom line, you can see the projected revenues more than offset the expected cost to operate the cabin village. And next slide, please. I'd be happy to take any questions that the city council has on the model.
Just a couple things, and then I do want to go to my colleagues. So when you had said that you have Social Security for some of the residents and you're only budgeting 20%, same thing with the Section 8. You, just to clarify, I think you said this well, but just saying it again, we will collect on everybody who has that. So in other words, this number could be 4 times the amount very reasonably, but you're being conservative.
Yeah, so
Okay.
just to look at raw numbers, the
Mhm.
the proposed project's 30 units. We know from Help of Ojai, most have Social Security, so we'll have, on each and every unit, we'll have a rental agreement in place, code of conduct in place. So at 20%, that's only assuming that 6% we're collecting from I'm sorry, 6 units.
You're right.
6 of 30, we're collecting rent from Social Security, and 6 of 30, we're collecting from a voucher program.
No, you
So
said,
a total of 12, which
Okay.
is very conservative.
Thank you. And then just 2 other things, and then I do want to hear my colleagues. So on the county portion, we hear that a lot in public comments or concerns, and I see it's a to be determined, and I get that. We have personally spoken with Matt on a few occasions, so I know there's not a crystal ball, but the intention, I think, with the request from staff is that we are vigorously pursuing what that relationship is going to be. That'll be a major task.
Ben has been having those conversations.
Yep.
I think so there's been some confusion on this topic. I think we have to have the cabin village in order to be eligible for the funding that is available. What we have now is not necessarily an emergency shelter. That was, something that you and I talked with the supervisor about, where 50% funding would be available, but that's not what is here currently. That's not what the new project is.
Yep.
It's again, money coming from Prop 1 and other sources, and Kimberly Albers is here in the audience, and I would think that perhaps that might be a better question for Kimberly to talk about what might be available when you have the project.
And then my last question, I would love to have her come up. We have a year 1 proposal, and my question is, I know what all of us are going to want to see is how difficult is a 2, 3, 4 year proposal. I know you know some of those numbers already, but even if we had sort of less confidence going out, meaning we're projecting, it seems like we wouldn't be too far off from being able to do that. And if the numbers continue to look good, I think that may at least just help us all understand the situation a little better, if it comes up. Okay. Yes, let me hear from my colleagues.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions. First of all, with the proposed location, even though we're not talking about location specifically, do we know what kind of environmental, are there going to be extra costs that come up with the construction or the building or with anything that's site specific?
So preliminary testing at the location has provided that the city doesn't need to go any further than what has already been done. Roughly, if you were going to throw out a ballpark number for the development cost of the Cabin Village project, it's about an $8 or $9 million project, roughly.
And one other question. With the grant, with the provisions of the grant, would it be possible to set aside any, if we are able to negotiate or work down the cost of the development, can we set aside any funding for the future maintenance and administrative costs?
Yes, the state has advised that the city is able to set aside future operating subsidies, which we would like to be able to do.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have
Yes,
a
Ms.
bunch
May.
of questions.
Okay, great.
First of all, I'm, you know,
And then just to make one clarification, so we'll deliberate after the public comments, but this would be questions to clarify anything that Mr. Alameda proposed.
okay,
Yeah.
with security
Mhm.
saying that, $100,900 a year. So my question is, so if that's what you're proposed there for a less amount of security, we're currently paying December's security bills for Tent Town is $46,000, almost 47,000. It's a big difference. So if they're going to have less security, moving away without Ames and all of that, so that's,
Well, keep in mind, so we're gonna have dedicated case management on site, which we don't have at Ojai Tent Town. So the need for security is going to be greatly lessened. So currently with Ojai Tent Town, you have security daily. So we have coverage for about 14 hours a day and then 24 hours on the weekends, where we're gonna have dedicated case management there, and we're also gonna have a controlled environment there as well. Where here, the security presence has been requested by the council, will be offset by the case management to a large degree.
okay. And then I struggle with not having a commitment from the county of Ventura. They committed, there's a unhoused, pretty much similar for 30 units in Thousand Oaks, and the county committed to $1.8 million. So I think that's something that should be in place
Yeah.
before we move forward.
The cost model doesn't look at undermining the county's support, it's just being very conservative. The number built in is 0 from the county. That doesn't mean that they aren't going to support the project.
You're expressing the future of the project.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think in
yeah.
order to move forward,
Mhm.
that we should see all of the costs. So like what, I know Tent Town now, when I brought it up with Mr. Harvey, like what have we put out as a city to fund that? And how much of that money that's been put out is gonna be reimbursed through the grant? So let's look at that. And I know it's not comparing, as he said, to Cabin Village, but I'm a numbers girl, so I wanna see what it's cost, compare it to what we have going, compare the two, and to not count on grants or this, or we're gonna do that. No, then if it's gonna be $500,000 to run a program, then if all of that is not secure, let's open up the books to the city to say, where are we as a community willing to cut $500,000? Do you wanna use, lose maintenance on the streets? What do you wanna do? I just think it's smart business to have all of the issues laid out. I don't see on this attachment anything for liability insurance.
The insurance coverage is in there. It's both for property and liability, and that's
For
from our
16
provider. Correct.
Wow, okay. Let's see, and then when do, to see the costs that are associated with building the Cabin Village, what is, would it be smart to wait and see what planning says? Like, okay, here for that proposed property, ADA curbs, that sounds like a big expense to me. So I would just like to see, and I think with having all of these numbers out there up front with everybody, the community, I think it would be less friction if we all knew where, having everything out there for all of us to see.
If I might ask, so you're partly asking questions about what Mr. Alameda proposed, and then you're asking larger questions about the project in general.
Yeah,
right?
there's,
Yeah,
like,
okay.
yeah,
I get what you're saying.
yeah, but I have,
Because the building project is not what we're talking about
Okay.
today.
so let's talk, we'll stick with the finances in.
Right, well, I mean, that's another
Okay.
conversation to have.
Okay. And I think too, to look out for, 1 year, as time goes on, it's gonna cost more. Another thing now, that just bringing it back, you said it's gonna have solar. There's no solar listed on your attachment.
You mean the panels?
Yeah.
I think that would be part of the construction cost, not the maintenance cost.
Yeah, just to be clear, this is purely operational. This is not development.
Okay.
And we've
Yeah.
talked about the development side that's going to be fully covered by the grant.
Mhm.
I'll let somebody else, I think I've gone
Yeah.
my 30.
Ms. Rule, anything?
Yeah, I was looking at Proposition 1, and I was wondering, because it seems specific that it will be for housing, and or mental services, building is what it seemed like for mental services. So I'm wondering if we need to have any clarity on if we've actually looked at the proposition and have clarity on what that money could be spent on. In other words, how general is that fund? How general can you pull from it?
That's a great question.
So I just would suggest that we look at that and perhaps come back with a recommendation that we, having looked at Proposition 1, we feel clear that we would be able to apply for this or this or this. And just as a, I've read through it, but I'm not exactly sure where the limits are. So perhaps someone else could do that for me.
If I might follow on, do we know when these would become available potentially? These
Prop 1
yes,
or
Prop 1.
I think we can come back with some specifics.
Okay.
I'm probably not ready, and I don't think Kimberly probably would want to do that tonight either. So, but if you give us the opportunity, we can probably give you some specifics there.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Great question.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
And correct me, but I've been told that some of the people at Tent Town for doing chores and stuff, they can earn up to $1,000 a month as a stipend.
Mm-hmm.
So that was under the resident steward program through St. Francis Challenge, which ended in December. So we are no longer paying
don't get
stipends at this point. We've now hired a part-time homeless services coordinator, and that along with a cadre of community volunteers are basically in the encampment every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then another question, it goes to last month's budget because things were so crazy and all of that. So I had questions there, and I just want to ask, because I noticed on the budget for December, there was $18,654.27 spent for intersection for the arts, St. Francis Challenge. What is that?
So I think you're asking about the warrant register that was maybe on the last
Right.
Agenda. I don't have that in front of me.
Oh, I think I do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer that immediately tonight.
I can answer that question for you.
Ms. Rule, please.
Yeah, so St. Francis Challenge actually, as a nonprofit, lives under Intersection for the Arts. So that is their
The reimbursement.
their
Okay.
sponsoring nonprofit is the Intersection for the Arts, which, having come from San Francisco, I'm very familiar with the Intersection of the Arts. So that's how that worked. That is their sponsoring nonprofit agency. It makes it easier for smaller types of nonprofits to do their work, as if they're sponsored by a larger agency. So that's where that cost come from.
So it was them getting paid.
Pardon? Yeah,
it was them getting paid.
It was them getting
St.
paid
Francis
through,
Challenge.
and
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Thank you for that. Mr. Whitman?
Yeah, thank you. I'm interested in the fact that the St. Francis Challenge part of the program has been concluded, and what was the thought process there?
So we brought in St. Francis Challenge to help us stabilize the population here, to implement a model of community. And the contract always was for a 6-month duration, and it ended at the end of December.
So it ended, and
Mhm.
it hasn't been proposed, and maybe right now is not the right time because we're in transition as to where they're going to be and how it's going to be
Well, I
worked
think.
out. But
Sorry.
yeah, I guess I have, it's a question. I have concern that I got positive feedback that adding St. Francis Challenge was a really, thoughtful move on our part, and that it made the tensions between, community and the tent town greatly reduced. So do we have any plans for anything similar, and, what would that cost in the future?
So again, it was a 6-month contract, and part of the goal was to stabilize the population. We feel that we were successful in that implementation. It ran its course, and we don't think that we need to have somebody living in OTT full time. We think that with our current arrangement of having a part-time homeless services coordinator, along with a bunch of volunteers also pitching in because we do have a large amount, we have not had issues since the end of the St. Francis Challenge at the end of December. In fact, things have been going very well. But I think it's also because of the work that was done, and that was a very intense period of time. We had a number of folks we had to transition out of OTT because they weren't able to live within the community. And what we've developed now is a group that can move into the Cabin Village project if the city goes forward with that. This group, is congealed and understands, what's required and asked of them, and are stepping up to make things happen.
Okay. Another question. We Carl talked about the concept of us becoming landlords with collecting rents. And I'm wondering, so, currently, are we considered landlords?
No, we're not.
Okay. So we're going to become landlords. Have we projected costs associated with the idea that we're now going to be landlords and all of the associated things that might happen because of that?
So the cost model does reflect things such as legal expenses. We understand that we're going to obviously have a tenant agreement with each participant, which makes things different than they are now. They're voluntary participants. There's property maintenance that goes along with that. That's also reflected in the model. So yes, we have contemplated that.
Okay.
And I should add, none of that's being invented from scratch. Because of the Dignity Moves model and them successfully operating this in at least 10 other sites, we'll be using their templates and then making minor adjustments as needed for the Ojai situation.
And I'm just going to...
So just to be clear on more for the public than I think I understand, but when this cost model that we have anticipates those expenses that would be associated with becoming landlords and those things that we would have to do as landlords that we're currently not doing as non-landlords.
Well, and let's be clear on something. We might not technically be a landlord now, but there are a lot of things that we are doing that are landlord-like. Okay?
But there's lots of laws associated with
I can
being
clarify
a landlord.
that. So what that means is we're expecting certain behaviors from our participants here, and it's very similar to a rental agreement. If you're living in an apartment community, there are rules when you live there. You can't go jump in the pool after 10 o'clock. The laundry room is locked at a certain time. We have rules here too. So everything is behavior based, which is similar to being a landlord. You expect certain behaviors out of those who live in your premise.
Okay, and then I'm just curious because I had a brother that had mental health issues. My sisters and myself were his conservators, legal, medical, power of attorneys, and all of that. And his rights, when he needed help or when we needed to get help for him, his rights trumped everything we had in the courts. So have you thought about that? So if somebody was in the Cabin Village and had some mental health issues and broke their lease or whatever, they have rights. So it's like they're not going to be able to just go.
So all tenants have rights, not just those with behavioral health issues. All tenants have rights, and we are aware of that. And part of what we'd like to bring to the model is a contract with Ventura County Behavioral Health, wherein a good portion of their service is dedicated to the folks who need it and want it in the Cabin Village project.
And the other aspect of it is we have used for Ojai 10 Town, and I won't speak to specific cases, but we have pursued restraining orders when we needed to, and we would continue to have that tool available as well, along with the hope that we never get there through sustained work through county behavioral health and help of Ojai and other partners.
And then who were the people that did the, interviewing, and what type of interview process did they go through to be able to transition from Tent Town to Cabin Village?
So let's take a step back.
Okay.
The city received $12.7 million in encampment resolution funding, and that money was to take an existing homeless encampment and transition it to permanent supportive housing. So those who were in the encampment on paper at a moment in time are potentially eligible to become that cabin village project. Now, along the way, we have evolved, right? We've brought folks in from the woodlands and the creek up into the parking lot. We built tents on platforms. We implemented a resident steward model, good neighbor agreements. So we found along the way that some people just weren't able to participate in the program and wouldn't be able to transition over.
Okay.
So it's not, if there is room in the future, we're at about 29 people right now. Our number is about 30. If there is room in the future, it's going to be a collective decision between, help and the city and possibly some other agencies if somebody's a good match for it. But right now we're pretty much full, and that's kind of been our status for as long as I've been here, which is a year. We've, onesie twosie had people come and go, but it's pretty static group. The same folks that were here when I got here are largely the same folks who are here now.
And then would you know some of those that have been removed? Do you know, are those the ones that are, perhaps camped behind Libby Bowl or?
The ones that I'm familiar with that have been removed, I largely don't see them. I don't know exactly where all of them went. That's unfortunate because I don't think that they probably were successful in finding housing. But Ojai, just like any other community, has a certain amount of homeless, and it's that's also part of the reason why I want to bring back a contract with Ventura County Behavioral Health, which wouldn't just be for, and I'm getting off topic here, I realize, it wouldn't just be for the Cabin Village and OTT, it'd be for all of Ojai, because we have a number of folks. I just was dealing with somebody this weekend who's in the situation that, needs services that is not in any type of program, but is in our jurisdiction. And what do we do?
You do say that on page 1.3, only 50% of the
Yeah.
project cost has been allocated to OTT and the Cabin Village programs. So it sounds like you're also talking about part of what we're doing here would be something larger than this individual space.
I'm sorry, I'm mixing. I'm just
Okay.
talking about a future item we'll bring back for your consideration.
I see what
and
you're
I
saying.
should not have mentioned that.
No,
but
that's okay.
that's what I'm talking
That's fine.
about.
Any other questions to
Yeah,
staff?
I've got a couple more.
Go ahead.
So a lot of people are focused on, when we have to use the grant money by. Do we have word from the state in terms of, any hard deadlines? Are they going to work with us if we're still trying to figure out a program that the community is going to accept? Or are they going to say, do this by now or you're being hauled away?
So the ERF grant funding by statute requires that you expend 50% of the development proceeds by the end of June of this year, by statute. Doesn't mean that you can't potentially work with the state, but that's more than, that's written into law.
But I think, didn't I come across something in the ERF grant? It said that it could go till 2027, like if we didn't get things dialed in, and you could.
So that's when you're spending the money. You're spending that
Okay.
money over that 2-year
By
time period.
27.
That would be in the maintenance piece, I'm presuming, right? You're using
And I'm
portions
gonna
of that.
lean, sorry to jump in,
No, go.
on Ms. Albers because she
Yeah.
knows ERF better than I do. And
Please.
Kimberly, can I bug you to come to the podium and introduce you to
you.
the council? Thank you
Yes.
for being here this evening.
Hello.
All right, Mayor Gilman, council members, I'm Kimberly Albers. I'm the new Homelessness Solutions Director in the County of Ventura. I just joined in November, and I did, in my former position over the last 6 years in Santa Barbara County, administer 3 encampment resolution funding grants and 3 Dignity Moves projects.
Wow.
So thus I'm here tonight in the hopes just to provide a little bit of what we've learned. Just to go to Councilmember Whitman's most recent comment, I do think because those funding deadlines are statutory, we were not able to move the 50% or the final expenditure deadline. But the piece that you do have is, as City Manager Harvey explained, you can move that into a dedicated account if you have leftover funds for operations. I believe Councilmember Lang asked about that. Those can be capitalized as operational subsidies, and it could live like that, but it does have to be transferred into a designated fund to where it appears spent, right? It cannot be moved to another another expenditure. I did just want to quick say too that permanent supportive housing has a 96% housing retention rate in this county, and it has been sustained for years. So it is very different when we're talking about emergency shelter or interim housing, like what's being built in Thousand Oaks and what you're building here. Permanent supportive housing is our most effective strategy. So I just want to make sure, I know because you have neighbors right here living in the tents, right? It's easy to make them feel the same. Even sometimes when City Manager Harvey and I are talking, we're talking OTT and Cabin Village, and it all gets mixed up together. It's like, no, they're completely separate, right? One, the state still views the folks living at OTT as unsheltered, and in permanent supportive housing, it's a different funding stream that we can access over time.
So I have some more questions, but if anybody has questions for our,
you're going to be around.
I am.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, go.
So,
thank you for being here.
I have a kind of a, structural question about.
Oh, mama.
I'm pleased that we're going to have this meeting on February 24th, where we can address, where the community can address and discuss issues and answer questions. But, how much of what we discuss and address tonight should actually, be deferred to the 24th, and how much, I'm not clear on if I'm going to be.
I'm really glad you asked the question. So I think it's a good question. I think tonight you should really just focus on the cost model. As the mayor pointed out, the project is going before the Planning Commission on the 19th. That's a great time to ask questions specific to the development, what's proposed, that sort of thing. You have general questions about, this program. That's an opportunity, I think, for the mayor's, what I'm calling the Chautauqua style city council meeting that we're going to have, where people can just ask questions, and we'll have a bunch of panelists, including Ms. Albers again, or Jen Harkey, or somebody from a place of knowledge that can answer these things. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, I have a question, but it's about the planning meeting, and I don't know. I know the last planning meeting that I watched in regards to the unhoused, they were bringing up different. Maybe it wasn't bringing up different dollar amounts, and they were saying like, no, you're not focused on the dollar amount. So my question is, during the planning meeting, will they talk like how much, just so we have a better understanding of how much an ADA curb is going to cost?
I think that's an appropriate type question for that meeting. I think what you're speaking to, council member, is in the we had questions at that meeting that were probably more based on what we're talking about here tonight, and so that's just kind of, I think, what Councilman was getting at.
and so
if I could jump in
maybe
there too. The other point to know is that, of course, the Planning Commission's purview is planning and zoning issues.
Right.
Budget issues are the council's purview. So there may be questions, and certainly I think we'll have more information on those fronts. But the Planning Commission doesn't make a decision on the budget questions. That'll become for the elected council.
So let's. I would request that we give a more. This is a question, but it's more for the public than anything. What should the public expect to be able to address at the planning meeting on the 19th?
Questions about the application, just like as if even though this is a city project, we're treating it as if it was a private applicant coming before the Planning Commission trying to get their project approved. We're not. Now, it's a city project, so we don't have to ask, and we're not asking the Planning Commission to approve the project, but we're using it as a forum for them to, under their zoning authority, to ask the types of questions and express the type of concerns that they would ask of an applicant, so that the public, can have that opportunity. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do want to support you, Ms. Mang, in this way. At that first planning commission meeting, there were all kinds of questions about the program, the cost of the maintenance. Those are all completely reasonable questions, and most of us were wanting more, and that's the intention, not only of the 19th, but of the 24th. And we're not done, obviously.
Right.
We will we'll dig in deeply on the budget, and as wherever it ends up being or whatever, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about this. So.
Well, sorry if I get. So the
Yes,
last
go.
thing is, it will come back before this city council at least once or twice, because after the Planning Commission is finished hearing it, after you have your Chautauqua style meeting, we're asking the council to ratify the decision. So that's another opportunity for a discussion.
Right. So just for, if I understand correctly, for us, when we get to our chance to discuss, we should really focus on the cost model. We can make some general statements about the project, but the details of the program are not really what we're here to talk about.
Not tonight, but we will. The
Yeah,
agenda report that
that's-
eventually comes before you, likely in March, and it might be one meeting, it might be two meetings, will be broad enough that I mean, really at that point, everything should be on the table because it's gone through the entire process. The project has been before the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is advisory to you, so of course you can. Anything would be, I think, at that point, fair game for discussion because it's.
I'm
moved
trying
through.
to edit myself for what comes
Thank
for
you.
what we do later. So my last question is, you've requested that we authorize you to negotiate with the county over some of these cost aspects, and can you explain a little bit more about what what those details you anticipate?
I think what we were getting at, and I think it's probably not written exactly as it should be. I'll ask Mr. Alameda to chime in, but I think we were specifically talking about the proposed agreement with Ventura County Behavioral Health. Okay, thank you. So maybe more specifically, what we're asking you to do is to ask me to go forward with negotiating a contract with Ventura County Behavioral Health to come before you at a future city council meeting. Bring that before you for consideration, because one thing outside of help of Ojai providing case management, it has been my observation that we could use a dedicated behavioral health specialist available to the residents. But beyond that, I'd also like to have that person's services available to the town in general, because like we were talking about a while ago, we have folks that are not in OTT that won't be in the Cabin Village that have behavioral health issues that we will need to address. And it's been my observation that the best people to do that are the county folks who are linked to the other county agencies that can provide the services.
So in lieu of us retaining somebody, we're looking at contracting with the county to be that person who's going to be a contracted staff person to address the behavioral health.
Yes, and this is a model that's in place in other cities currently, and I know this is not on the agenda tonight, so I'm sorry for dragging us down this path. But yeah, just looking for your direction to say, yeah, why don't you go ahead and bring that back to us for consideration.
Thank you.
Yes. Very quick question, because
Yeah.
I do want to get to public comment.
That's all right.
Maybe at the same time, we could interweave the our delving into Prop 1 and find out what could be covered
Great
and
idea.
things like that. I was at the Planning Commission meeting when it was just kind of all questions were taken, and it was very, very confusing because the Planning Commission does not have the answers to a lot of this. It's not their purview, and it confused them, and they were like, we don't know. We don't feel like we know. So I just wanted to, one place that folks can look if they want is Title 10 on the municipal code. And this is what the Planning Commission will be asked to review. And they're high-level headings that you can look at just to get a sense of where their responsibilities lie. And I think it would make for a much more effective and productive meeting for everybody if you, and just look at Title 10. You can just go with the subheads, and you'll get a real clear sense of what the Planning Commission can handle and should be handling. They were overwhelmed. The public was overwhelmed. Everybody was overwhelmed. Just that's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
So I will go to public comment, and I just want to remind you what we want to engage in at this point is this Ojai Cabin Village cost model. So we're not talking about the location. or any, oh, that was in the public comment portion. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Well, hold on. Let me ask Mr. Montgomery. What's happening?
There's some confusion with the special meeting.
Okay.
We have taken general public comment already.
I
ensured our public that their submitted card,
Okay.
they would be heard.
Let me hear him, please. I strive to be honest every day. Go ahead.
I recommend to you, Mayor and Council, we took general.
Guys.
We took general public comment for a special meeting already.
Yep.
To ensure we hear all from all the public, I suggest we take all the cards, unless I hear differently from my city manager.
That's fine with me. But I guess what I want to offer to you is to say, that is something that we're going to take up very seriously going forward. But this is what we're focusing on right now. So if you feel you need to say something about it, we will hear it. So let me start off with Casey Abbott, Daryl Ralston, and Jim Beckett. Thank you.
Good evening, and I'm surprised to not say welcome to Larry Steingold show. He hasn't talked yet tonight.
Yes.
Sorry, Larry. Just want to express deep felt thanks for all the people who've reached inside their pockets and inside their calendars and give time, effort, money, and solar panels and batteries for us to enjoy a better level of life there at this tent town. As we transition to the permanent housing, we are really just so overwhelmed by the kindness that Ojai has shown us. And we're given lots of assurances that we're going to be getting continued support from a lot of people. So thank you, Ojai. You are awesome. I love this town. I want to do lots of things for it. I do what little I can. I found somebody's purse the other day. It had their remote for their keys in. I took it over to the police station yesterday morning, and they said, thank you. Someone said, "Did you tell them you're from Ojai 10 times?" I said, they know me, come on. But the same thing I feel with the council and the city staff. You guys are incredible. We really, really deeply appreciate it. Did want to bring up one thing for a possible item is we'd like to look into the relocation of Persimmon Hill to someplace like Antarctica or
no need for that.
Mongolia.
No need for that.
I'm sorry. Let's maybe reword that or rephrase that. Okay.
Thanks.
Stay focused on that.
Yep. No need to use all your time either.
Oh, okay. Well, we can cut it off anytime.
Okay.
But the efforts that are being made here to make this a continuous thing and to stay on target for what the state has offered us, we really, really appreciate that. We're willing to help any way we can. And we've got a number of projects in the works here that some of these Ojai tent town people that are currently residents there are going to be helping on. And it should help even somewhat financially toward the goals of this cabin village. They have, for example, a celebration that's going to be coming up. It's the Lake Casitas Redneck Festival. And financing for that is going to help Laundry Love and perhaps this cabin village. So anyways, everybody hang with us. Thanks for your patience. We hope that the racquetball people won't make too big of a disturbance over there at Persimmon Hill. We can hear them certainly from the tent town. But anyways, everybody, thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Daryl Ralston, Jim Beckett, and then Bill Miley.
Mayor and Council, I know there's a lot of people here and we've been waiting a long time, so I'm just going to make a couple of brief comments and then let the rest of the people talk. But any cost model should be a complete, comprehensive, and accurate presentation of costs. And I see a lot of ambiguity and concern for the future in the cost model. Several council members feel that funding should be established first. And I think that as a member of the public, I think we should establish a firm future for this program. And then last week there was some discussion under one of the Help of Ojai contracts that the council had about basically several members stated that their support for long-term permanent housing, but say that they aren't interested in securing funding for a cabin village in the future. And that's a discussion that was had here, and I think that that's not a kind of an attitude that the public deserves. I think we need to plan for the future, and we need to be cognizant of those things.
Okay.
And then I just want to thank Councilwoman Whitman and Mang for their support, because they're saying that the responsible stewardship of the city would demand that the funding be put in place before moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alton. Jim Beckett, Bill Miley, and then David Chapman.
Good evening.
No, address us.
And Mr. Mayor and the council members. I have lived in Ojai for 27 years. I had a daughter of special needs, and she went through the Ojai school system, and under those circumstances, she received very good schooling, and I'm very grateful for that. I also am wearing my regulation Patagonia jacket, which is bona fide, so I'm good. Okay, I came tonight to discuss the issue of who would build these houses, and I'm probably off kilter.
Go ahead.
Okay, and I was wondering why the current, I'm going to look at my notes. Yes, Dignity Homes. I didn't need my notes. Okay. But after this majestic presentation, I now know why Dignity Moves is the selected home builder. Is that correct, Mr. Allen? Yes. All right. Okay, good. Well, then that's all what I have to say. I was wondering if cost is any issue with all these billions of dollars floating out there. But I would like to mention something. Most of you know about Mesa, right?
Yes.
You gotta address this.
Anyway, how they did it was they were factory-built houses to their specification. And those were done in Southern California, though they were part of a national home building facility. And those houses that they built ran between $70,000 and $80,000. So again, if cost is an issue with all these millions floating around, that is a factor. So anyway, that's all I have to say, because I'm so far behind the curve after listening to this. After listening to this, I've totally disappeared off the learning curve. So I hope I will be able to learn more. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Beckett. Bill Miley, David Chapman, and then Marcy Tosher.
Hello. I fully support the city's homeless program. Some questions. Will there be internet service in each cabin? It would be really supportive to have it, but it could be timed and you could turn it off at 11 or something. Will the sheriff's service be the same as now? It's about the same distance, and you can't get too much for 12 grand. Will there be an organized food service daily, or will each resident provide their own food? I think a daily food service provided by the program should happen at least 2 times a day. Nutrition is really important. And, okay, will the new community service coordinator provide any direct service help to the residents? Will there be an on-site manager at night? Will there be a weekend holiday manager? And what is an onboarding in-house property manager? Is it a surfing person? Something like that. Okay. Comments. The section about county funding says currently none. It doesn't seem right when other cities are getting funds for homeless services. See the last couple of supervisor meetings and their agendas. A question arose about the distance of houses from Persimmon Hill. By using Google Earth, the nearest house is 495 feet. Lot sizes range from 2 acres to 5.33. The second distance house is 582 feet. The third distance is 709 feet. Even though the net cost seems to be zero, and that's great, my choice in the future is to consider the role of our tourist industry in adding to the cause of housing crisis. My logic says it has. Therefore, I believe the city should allocate some tourist tax funding to the Cabin Village program every year because of what the tourist industry, I believe, has done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miley. No need to clap. Thank you. David Chapman, Marcy Tosher, and then Brad Smith.
Hello, Council. I would like to reiterate my support and Mayor Gilman's public support for the Cabbage Village to be built on the public works yard. This location is entirely appropriate for such a project.
Mm-hmm.
It is more than appropriate. It is ideal. It is perfect. It will be on a large lot surrounded by trees, as you have heard. It is close to town and services to support Ojai's unhoused community, a community you, the people of Ojai, care about. Those opposed to the site use thinly veiled arguments and inaccuracies for their opposition, using fear to stoke the fires of dissent. Some of the points that have been documented and raised are: number one, it poses a threat to downtown tourism. What is the nature of this threat? Is it the threat of people walking by? Is it the threat of elderly residents moving with their walkers? The proposed Cabin Village is 1,827 feet from downtown. Tourists will not even see it from there. Tourists may even want to see the results of Ojai's compassion and what our small town can achieve. Number two, actually that one's going to be skipped.
Mm-hmm.
Number three, the next point raised was conduct a proper vetting of alternative sites. As you all know, this has been done early in the program. There is no perfect site. There is an appropriate site. There is an ideal site, and that site is the public works yard. Using the yard land does not cost the city anything. Resulting savings of $1 to $2 million can be channeled into providing better facilities and improved support. Next, you will hear consider sites outside city limits in partnership with the County of Ventura. This is a non-starter. First, the county does not and will not fund construction of permanent supportive housing. The county will not provide land, and that includes the Honor Farm. However, the county will provide support services, as you've heard, through their Continuum of Care program and other funding through grants. Mayor and Council, the path forward is clear. The public works yard is the best site for the Cabin Village. Let's start building, Ojai. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Marcy, please. Thank you. Marcy Tosher, please, and then Brad Smith, and then Leanna McNeely.
Hi. The coffee smells good.
Mm.
We need it. Anyway, I want to voice my support for the Cabin Village project and the previously approved site of the Public Works Yard, but I want to address statements made that the people in Ojai Tent Town don't belong in a residential neighborhood. That statement implies that these people are not worthy to live amongst the rest of us who are fortunate enough to have housing. It implies that they are less than us, that they are the others. And they're unworthy to live among the people who in many cases grew up with. That's a harsh thing to think about. I'd ask you to consider how you would feel if that statement were made about you, that you weren't good enough to live with the other residents of this town. The Ojai Tent Town residents have lived a block from my home for a year. And yes, initially there were some minor incidents. However, in the last 7 months, remediation took place and a cohesive community emerged amongst the OTT residents. I can honestly say that the interactions with them have been positive, friendly, and courteous. I ask that everyone engage with their empathy. Imagine yourself in the position that the people in Ojai Tent Town are living in before making any statements demeaning, degrading, or devaluing these individuals. Ask yourself, how would I feel if it were said about me? Because believe me, the people living in Ojai Tent Town, they hear you. And they read your public statements in the paper and in the petition that's circulating. Words have power to elevate or denigrate. Please use that power wisely and for good. Thank you. And I just want to say that as a practical matter, think about this. If this project doesn't go forward, we've got people that the city has taken them on, and they live there, and they're sheltered. What will become of them? Where are you going to put them? And I think you'll see that to maintain them in tents, which we all agree is unacceptable, is going to cost the city at least $500,000 to $600,000 a year to maintain them in tents with porta potties, without kitchen, without all of that. So think about what the result will be, and where are the people going to go? I think also you'll find a lot of them, if everyone is cut loose from Tent Town and that is demolished, I think you'll find them back in the gazebo in Libby Park. You'll find them in the arcade. You'll find them everywhere where you gathered them from before this was created. So think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tosher. Brad Smith, Leanna McNeely, and Ruth Miller. Yes. Oh, great. Bless your heart. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. And then Tim Williamson after Ruth Miller. Thank you.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor, and City Administration.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to begin first by thanking the administration for fencing OTT. It is an important step to ensuring the safety of the OTT residents and preventing unauthorized people from doing harm to them, which, as we all know, has occurred in the past. Next, I'd like to thank the City Council members who stand with this project and the chosen location. And I'd also like to thank Mayor Gilman, who's publicly endorsed this project along with the Public Works Yard as a preferred site. That public stance of support is why so many of us voted for you. I am disheartened by the information, though, surrounding this project. There's a sophisticated campaign falsely presenting this project as an intensive treatment center which will have armed guards patrolling the grounds. As we heard tonight from Carl, these are two false statements among many. The only vilification that I've heard is vilification of people living at OTT who are presumed to be mother rapers, father stabbers, and apparently child molesters. That is just untrue and unkind. This project is a low-income rental housing project that will give people the stability they have been missing. The Cabin Village will have help of Ojai assisting the residents connect with services such as VA, Medi-Cal, and SNAP benefits. They will assist with alternative housing and employment services. County Behavioral Health Services will be on site several days a week during the week to provide counseling for anxiety, depression, low self-worth, and other mental health issues common among people without homes. There will be no psychiatrist or psychologist on site, no medical personnel dispensing or monitoring medications. This project is not a rehab facility, not a mental health facility, or a dumping ground for people with severe mental illness, and is certainly not an intensive treatment center. Currently, Ojai Tent Town sits on the parking lot of a park and next to our city hall and is embedded in multiple neighborhoods. Many of us living close to OTT have had the privilege of engaging with many of their residents. I have been treated courteously and kindly by the people who live there. The suggestion that the people who live there pose a threat to the community is a falsehood. And to those spreading those falsehoods, please take the time to learn the facts. And if you just don't care about the facts, at least stop spreading lies about this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McNeely. Ruth Miller, Tim Williamson, and then Carol Avalon. Ruth? Ms. Miller, while you're coming up, I feel compelled to mention one thing, which is the only thing that is in front of us tonight is to look at this cost model. I'm just bringing that up one more time. And so I understand the desire to want to express feelings for or against the site or the project in general. And of course, we are going to hear all those things. It doesn't, that's not anything that we're going to weigh in at the moment. Just letting you know that. But of course, we're going to hear everything.
I understand
yes.
that.
Okay.
I perfectly understand that. We were told that there wasn't going to
Thank
be any comments prior to the meeting.
Yes.
Or otherwise, I would have done this prior to the meeting.
No, my
I
mistake.
apologize
Sorry
for
about that. No, my fault.
So, good evening. I'm Ruth Miller with the Unhoused Task Force, friend of the Cabin Village, and on-site volunteer at Tent Town. I'm going to read something from the petition page of those who are opposed to the Cabin Village, entitled, "Oh My, Say No." While we support helping those in need, we strongly believe the project should be relocated to a site that does not endanger the safety of our children, family, and businesses. The idea of having an intensive treatment facility with armed security just steps away from Libby Park, where children play, families gather, and people enjoy public events, is simply unacceptable. The Cabin Village will not have an intensive treatment facility, nor will there be armed guards at the Cabin Village. Those who are against the project are spreading false information and gathering signatures based on false information. The truth is, there will be behavioral health support for those who need it. It's well documented that those who are unhoused have had trauma in their lives. In fact, just being unhoused is traumatic. Neither Tent Town nor the Cabin Village will be equipped to handle those with severe issues. They won't be there. There have been people in the past who've resided in Tent Town who have caused problems. They've been exited from the program. The current residents are not a danger to anyone. Residents do and will continue to be required to coexist with their neighbors peacefully. This is my fanny pack that I take to Tent Town. In it, I have my keys, I have my cell phone, and I have dog treats. I do not have a weapon. I have not once felt threatened in any way. The residents are courteous, peaceful, and grateful, which is truly humbling. Sometimes I'm wondering why I'm there. It's so quiet. Then someone needs a ride to the doctor when their ride doesn't show up. Or someone brings donations. By the way, thank you everyone who brought blankets. They all got used. And sometimes one of the residents is having a bad day and just needs someone to sit with. I don't really do much, but I think it's important for the residents to know that people do care, especially after a community meeting like this, where they are vilified. Building the Cabin Village is the right thing to do. Please say, oh yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Tim Williamson, Carol Avalon, and Paul, I believe it's Stanton. I can't read one of the letters. Tim Williamson? Okay. Carol Avalon, and then Paul Stanton, if I'm getting the last name right. And then Susan Stifelman. Carol Avalon. Yep, okay. Paul Stanton, did I get the last name correct? Or something close to that? Okay. Susan Stifelman? Okay. Lori Sigmund. Thanks. And then Anita Cram, and then Grace Malloy.
Good evening.
Hello.
I want to thank the city officials for doing all the work they did on their cost proposal for 1 year. It looks like they have been working with Dignity Moves on, projections for expenses. But I would also recommend that they take a look at actual projects that Dignity Moves has done that are up and running. For example, the city of Alameda in Alameda County, which is in the East Bay, Dignity Village was built, 47 units, 61-bed facility. They provide a meal service. I believe Bill Miley suggested that might be considered for Cabin Village. At that facility, their annual costs for meal service, $465,000 a year. $8.33 per meal, 150 meals a day. I mean, that is for 61 participants, so you could easily half that. They offer 24/7 security with 4.5 guards, and that's $225,000 a year. I don't think that the projection that the city has made for a combination of sheriff's service and security, I think that's way, way underestimated. So I suggest you talk to the city of Alameda about that. Dignity Village contract up in Alameda contracted with a nonprofit agency for 5 years for maintenance, case management, and security. And in that 5 years, that was a $10.7 million contract. So that's $2.1 million a year. Also, I'd like to point out that the city of Alameda got a $12.3 million grant, and the county of Alameda pledged $2.35 million for 5 years toward operating cost. We don't have anything from Ventura County. And I don't think we should go forward until we do. We're talking a lot of money there. I think the city needs to come back with a confirmed and concrete pledge from Ventura County. I'm just throwing numbers out there, but probably at least $3 million for a 5-year commitment. And there's no funding from the county in the current projection. I'm going to run out of time, but I think that needs to be looked at, and I think the city needs to look at other up and running Dignity Moves projects. Don't get it from Dignity Moves, get it from the city.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sigmund. Anita Cram, Grace Malloy, and then Austin Ringelstein.
Good evening, and thank you, everyone. I'll
Hello.
just quickly point out that we listened to a lot of off-subject before we're going off-subject.
Fair enough.
So I think the Public Works Yard is the best site Ojai has to offer some of our most vulnerable community members. Mature trees shield it from street view and provide a sense of privacy and safety for those living in the village. It is within walking distance of many community services. A native landscape will be added to the property, increasing its value as biological habitat within our little community. Cobb earthen construction for the hacienda-style homes built by a local builder will create an innovative approach to housing in our town. We can show other communities an approach to building that is more fire-hardy, built with sustainable materials, and crucial to the future of human housing. It is understandable that some neighbors might be concerned about the project. The homeless have become scapegoats for problems they did not create. I ask any concerned person to step outside of the walls they have built around themselves and open your minds and your hearts to the beauty of these human beings, currently destined to live in our newly planned village. I've met many of them, had wonderful conversations with them. They are good people. Many are elderly. A significant percentage grew up in Ojai, outpriced to live in their own community. A number are women. All are committed to good conduct, and they will pay rent. They are of acutely low income, which is a group of people that the state of California has completely neglected and left out. I've owned a home on the same block as a low-income housing, and it was not a problem. I had good neighbors. Please go deep into your heart and look for the love and kindness that is emblematic of our precious community. And I would also like to make one more point that someone else brought up briefly. There was a Zoom participant who talked about vilification between for and against. Well, as we all know, the most vilified here are the homeless, incorrectly and improperly vilified. So I would like to ask people to think about that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Please
Cram.
approve this project at this.
Thank you. Grace Malloy, Austin Ringelstein, and then Barbara Donahue.
Good evening, council members,
Hello.
mayor. I'm going to go off topic, but I have babysitting tonight, so
Yeah.
you better hear it. My name's Grace Malloy. I'm an Ojai resident, and I'm in favor of the very conservative cost model as detailed this evening, and of negotiation with county behavioral health, and with proceeding as quickly as possible with the cabin village at the currently proposed already owned site. The urgency of caring for these unhoused community members and the miraculousness of these available funds outweigh anything else, in my opinion. It's especially heartening that Dignity Moves has provided their very well-tested numbers. Change is really hard, especially when it comes to our homes and our sense of safety. I hear the discomfort exhibited by the neighboring residents who've spoken tonight, but please think and feel about the folks we all walked by when we entered this space tonight. And I just stood there for a second and felt the rain on my body. And please, try as hard as you can to feel that in every moment, even when you're just talking about numbers. What they're experiencing is a lot more than discomfort. Their needs and voices are what must be amplified by those in power and what should lead every step of this process. Your responsibility as leaders in our community is to recognize the inequity and resources represented here tonight and take action as soon and as often as you can to try to get real roofs over every community member's head. I have big concerns about what happens if next steps aren't taken swiftly by the council at this heavily researched, very practical, already owned site. How can you possibly spend or even commit over $6 million by June without solidifying the plans at this city site as soon as possible? Funds this plentiful and accessible may never be available again in my lifetime, much less in the lifetimes of the folks living in OTT who average older than me. Please listen to the wisdom of organizations like HELP, who've been working with folks like the OTT resident for over 50 years. This is the right project in the right place with miraculous funds. Please build the cabin village at the right time now. I'd also like to say that as a teacher and a mother of a 5-year-old with another on the way, I'm super concerned about the safety of our children. We are all children of someone. Our neighbors in OTT are someone's kids too. And I'm very concerned about their safety. I'm concerned about my own children's safety, which is why I make sure to bring my son with me whenever I go to OTT, have him help cook and carry food and build tents and get to know the residents so that he can learn the reality, which is that these folks are kind and safe and need our help. This misperception that homelessness equals violence must be put to rest. It's not safe for our kids or anyone to live in a community where
Thank you, Ms. Malloy. Austin Ringelstein, Barbara Donahue, and Betsy Sticks.
Thank
Hello.
you all.
Hi.
I'm in support of Cabin Village as planned. I've got a great deal of respect for the people who are putting so much time into supporting the unhoused in this community here. As you spoke about, yeah, not in a falsely charitable way either, but because the measure of a society is how it treats its most vulnerable members. Because it could be any one of us. Many of us are all either one fire away, one medical procedure away, one paycheck away, one accident away, or layoff away, one executive order away from not being able to keep our homes. So we're not separate from anyone who's unhoused. We are them. And maybe we were them at one point, if we think esoterically, I guess. But with gentrification and greed astronomically increasing the cost of housing, I've seen a lot of friends who are the soul of this community be forced to leave. And I think it's just as important that we build this while we have the opportunity, and also keep working on the symptoms of the problem. As a veteran who had a hard time after being medically discharged, I wouldn't be able to live here in Ojai without the privileges and special support I've received from other veterans, friends, and family. Not everyone has these safety nets. This economy and culture of exploitation, skyrocketing housing, promotes extreme inequality, the most we've seen in 100 years. Remember the Gilded Age. But this culture of taking without giving is not who we are in Ojai. We're we try to be different. We aim to be examples. We can choose to be compassionate and giving. We are a caring and loving community. So I think we can ask ourselves, do we want to be a city defined by inequality, haves and have-nots, or a city defined by compassion and care? And there are myths that the unhoused are coming from elsewhere, right? Most are long-term residents over the age of 55. This has been well documented by the LA Times. And I'll leave it with a quote by Ojai's own Aldous Huxley, who said, it's a bit embarrassing to have been concerned with the human problem all one's life and find at the end that one has no more to offer by way of advice than to try to be a little kinder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ringelstein. We're almost done. Barbara Donahue, Betsy Sticks, and Petter Roaming. Barbara Donahue. Okay, Betsy Sticks, please. Petter Roaming, and then I have one that says no name provided. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Good evening, council, mayor, staff, and Ojai residents.
Thank you.
Long time no see. It's an honor to speak at your board meeting. Thank you, Carl, for your expertise and attention to detail. Much appreciated. Over the last 18 months, 10 different potential locations for the Cabin Village have been considered and shot down one by one. The city manager, through council direction or through his own due diligence, reviewed all of them. Thank you, Ben. There were also several other non-starter sites thrown into the hat. Here's the list of the 10 locations. The current site here at Kent Hall, not ideal. The 4 county locations, the Honor Farm, Soul Park, Camp Comfort, Miners Oaks Public Works Yard. The county said no to each one. There was a lot at 601 East Ojai, a no-go. The Board of Realtors stepped in, which was great. 4 suggestions, thank you to them. Rotary Park at the Y, the fire station on Ojai Avenue, the lot on Maricopa Highway near Nordhoff, and the Lower Public Works Yard. There was opposition to each location. There is no perfect place. There are 4 reasons to move forward with the Cabin Village budget at the Lower Public Works Yard. Number 1, the state gave Ojai and not the county the grant money. I have spoken to County Supervisor Matt Levere on a few occasions about this topic. The city manager has done the same, as well as speaking to County CEO Savette Johnson. We were told that we need to find a place within the city. Federal benefits are drying up, and we can't bank on anything from the federal government. This money is here. We need to use half of it by June, or we have to give the money back. Number 2, we have a budget, thank you, Carl, and a path forward to pay for the Cabin Village at the Public Works Yard. We already own the lot, so we don't have to buy a piece of property. That is huge. The city will apply for more grants once it is built. Number 3, it's a great plan. The drawings reminded me of the El Roblar plans. For real, they are both gorgeous. Dignity Moves has an incredible track record. It's going to be a beautiful model for other cities. The location is near services, groceries, and transportation. Once we have a facility built, the county will help us with behavioral health support. And number 4, most importantly, the people living outside in tents are our community members, our friends, and our family.
Thank you, Ms. Dix. Peter Roaming, and then one that says no name provided, and then Liz Otterbein. Petter. Thank you.
Dear council members.
Hello.
My name is Petter Roaming, and I live here in Ojai. Funding opportunities that are mentioned in the cost model for the cabin village are speculation, and I quote, funding from Ventura County will be available to the extent possible. How can the city of Ojai undertake such a large project without knowing how it will be paid for long term? The cabin village could be a 30-year or more financial commitment to the city, and this cost model is for year 1. To base a commitment of the cabin village on this first-year cost model would be irresponsible. By the way, it's not the initial investment that will kill this project. It's the daily cost of operations. A project of this size requires at least a 15-year model and a thorough evaluation of all the cost and income numbers. Here are a few comments to the current model. The largest operating income is for in interest payment from the ERF grant money, but that goes away after year 1. So 2/3 of what is classified as income right now only applies to when the site is under construction. The model has 2 lines on resident revenue. Does the city manager plan to divert some of the income from the tent town while building the cabin village and classify it as income? As far as I know, the tent town is a financial net negative to the city. I have looked at Thousand Oaks project for unhoused. Their project will be ready for residents soon, and it's a 30 housing unit project and very similar plans to the cabin village, but they are a little bit further along. Their estimated operating cost is $1.2 million annually, twice as much as the cabin village cost model. A large part of the TO operating budget are for critical or very critical services as help residents navigate their opportunities for permanent housing, employment services, job skills training, healthcare services, mental health services, substance abuse treatments. I used their yearly operating costs of $1.2 million and escalated over 15 years, adjusting for inflation. The total operating cost for cabin village over 15 years will be over $21 million. That is a $350 tax burden on every Ojai taxpayer, and that's just for the first year. For a 15-year budget, that is $6,160.
Finish quickly.
Last week, I heard that the county, one of the city council members said that, what if we run out of funds after 5 years? What will we will just close down. How is it possible to say that? Tell the residents that after at the cabin village, sorry, we run out of money and you have to now be homeless again? So after 5 years, the city have used up more than $15 million.
Thank you, Mr. Roaming. I have one that says no name provided. No, that's not you. I have your card. And then I have Liz Otterbein. Oh, she left. Okay. And then I have one that is T. I can't read it. It's
yeah,
T.
that's T.
No, I have yours also here. But that's it. Come in.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, the cabinet.
Mhm.
Thank you, all members. Yeah, my language is gonna be a little different, but I'm standing here to all the people, none of us want to be in a tent. All I'm asking to be treated like a normal people, because sometimes we don't have even food or anything, and we just in a damn tents. And we are educated, we can do something, but because sometimes the skin of our car gives us nothing. Please change that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last card I have is Larry Steingold. And if I've missed someone's card, it's because I maybe couldn't read. It seemed like there was possibly doubles, but Mr. Steingold.
Larry Steingold, and it's not
Okay.
my show. It's your show.
Fair
Though I
enough.
do appreciate it. Is there a line item for environmental insurance in the budget? The city has, even though the city has done a phase one that shows 120 years of usage with gaps of knowledge, and that the environmental company is knowing that it's going to be used for residential, it would be nice to ensure for these residents, if you go there, that the dirt is not contaminated from decades of whatever. You have a duty of care to protect the public safety. Is it a breach of duty, refusing to act on potential known risks or unknown risks? By doing the phase two, you make the risk go away for the most part. These are foreseeable issues. I mean, somebody gets sick, they do a blood test, they find lead, they find arsenic. They're gonna go, did you do a phase two? And we're gonna go, oh no, we were relying on a phase one. That to me, after 40 years of industrial brokerage, not ownership, brokerage, screams, do a phase two. Okay, not to stop the project, but to lessen liability to the residents and to the city financially. This is foreseeable. You have causation, you have damages. Just do the phase two. You can't, it's not the money. What is it, 25, 30, 40 grand to do a phase two? How long is it gonna take? 2 weeks, 3 weeks to drill some holes? You wanna jump the line and get the environmental done, give them a few more dollars. And it's done, it's over with. It can't be because we don't care about the residents, otherwise we wouldn't be here. Okay, is it fear of finding something that will kill the project? Quite possibly. That's the downside. Then you have to find a location or remediate and clean it up and now put them on a clean site. But it's, I mean, I don't know if there's such a phrase of public malpractice, but I've seen deals die because of bad dirt. The city of Rhode Island cleaned up a place, laid down dirt, laid down a barrier and said, okay, live on it. Camp Resolute, Sacramento closed down. And it was a known environmental site. We don't have that problem yet. I really don't want to find out 6 months from now when they start digging that the dirt smells and you got to move it anyway, or somebody gets sick. I mean, it's not fair to the residents and it's not fair to the city to not do a phase two. Please do one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steingold. I have Lauren and then Raul Alvarado. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Everybody still awake?
Hello.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Lauren Nichols, and I'm a local mother of two and a small business owner. Professionally, I specialize in project management services, particularly for affordable housing developments and community benefit projects in the Tri-County area. Tonight, I'd like to express my full support for the Ojai Cabin Village project at the city's Public Works Maintenance Yard. I'd also like to advocate for council members to authorize our city manager to move forward with negotiations with the County of Ventura for operational funding agreement as soon as possible. In terms of the cost model, overall, I feel the budget as is a comprehensive draft and should be enough information for the city manager to move forward with negotiations with the county if these two discussion items are interlinked. Tonight, I'm hearing several comments regarding a lack of county commitments at this time. I see this initial operation agreement as really the first step in that process. I'm also hearing operational cost comparisons for temporary and emergency housing budgets developed by Dignity Moves. And I just want to note that these are very, very different budget models than a permanent supportive housing development, which is what we are talking about tonight. Typically, temporary and emergency housing solutions are, the operating budgets are so much higher than permanent supportive housing. I did submit some specific comments on the cost model via email ahead of the January 28th council meeting, although some of my comments have been clarified through the presentation tonight, so thank you for that. One comment I do have is still regarding who will serve the actual role as property manager. So I know that has been discussed a little bit, but will it be Dignity Moves or the city? And typically in nonprofit housing, it's typical to charge about a 3% property management fee in addition to the property manager's salary and other staff that may be needed for property management services. So that might be something that you'd like to include in this cost budget. I didn't see an actual fee for those services or other staff time. And then I will just like to jump ahead and express my sincere gratitude to city staff and elected officials who have played a role in championing this project to date. We have such a unique and incredible opportunity within the city right now in having secured this public funding source. As a community, we could essentially solve homelessness in our city in one fell swoop, and that is so very rarely the case. Let's do this. I'm proud to support this project. I'm proud to teach my kids about it, and we got money to spend.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Raul Alvarado. Hello.
I was about the budget. Just a couple of comments I'd like to make based on what I heard today. You know, I've been involved in the nonprofit world in LA for quite a long time. I was board chair for Children's Institute. That grew from about 11 million to close to 100 million right now. We had two capital campaigns, one in the Rampart area for 20 million, 22 million, and the other one for 30 million in the Watts area. For both campaigns, now we provide mental health services. About half of the budget was for services versus the building. So one concern I would have, and I know you're trying, I was very happy to see the Ventura County behavioral health person here. What tends to be underestimated significantly is the cost of the services. If you, for example, look at Homeboys, Father Boyle, they had a $12 million campaign to build a building, and they forgot to raise the money for the services, and they almost went broke. So I don't know if the 50-50 split is appropriate for here, but I would encourage you to really look at that carefully because those numbers can balloon. The city of LA estimated a homelessness budget of like 9 million, and now it's ballooned to 20-some million now. Lastly, all we have heard is about the cabin. I would like to understand better. Homelessness is very complicated. It would be good for the Ojai community to understand what issues are this homeless population dealing with, because it's highly complicated, and what kind of services they were going to be required. Is it an issue of income? Is it an issue of just housing? Is it an issue of mental health? Are we dealing with trauma? It's very complex. So it would be good to really address that in detail. So I'm not talking about, you can place it wherever you want to, but, or whatever makes sense. But I think, the services that we owe these people, they have to be done well, because the building is not going to do it. It's going to be the services that we provide to support them. So it would be good to understand like the layers of problems or things that we're trying to help them with, and then to really dig into that and see how we're going to handle that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarado. That's all the cards I have. Mr. Montgomery, anything online?
Mayor, we have no raised hands, but let's just take a moment. Zoom participants, I'm speaking to you. We have no raised hands, but this is your opportunity now to speak on item 1 on the agenda. Last call. And Mayor, we'll move on.
Great. I have to take a 5-minute break, but I'm going to leave it to unless you need a break.
Okay.
Nope.
I took one.
Start.
But does anybody else need a break?
Yeah. You need a break also?
Yeah, just a quick one.
5-minute break.
Okay,
Literal 5-minute break.
Okay. I know. I missed my chance.
We're going to call session again. Let me do a quick check here, Mr. Harvey. We're going to have our conversation right now, and I'm suspecting that we will go past 10 o'clock. And we typically don't take items after 10 o'clock, which would possibly mean that the motorcycle officer would move to next week. Is that okay?
Okay, there's your answer.
Now, then I think that's likely. So then I want to tell the few people that have put in cards for item 2 that just because we don't want to take up an item after 10 o'clock and make poor decisions, that we will move this to next week's meeting. And I apologize for that, but I think it's in it's in everyone's best interest. Okay, back to discussion. Well, I would do it, but anyway. Who would like to start the conversation? I'm ready to make a motion, but yeah, we're on discussion now.
Let me
of
just
item
jump
1.
in real quick.
Is there a motion to be made?
Yeah.
No,
No.
all I need are head nods if you'd like me to proceed with the Ventura County negotiations to bring something back to you to consider
Yes.
in the future?
That's what.
Unless I see somebody.
No, we
Well,
want.
I've got
Okay.
I have a variation on that because I have always thought that we should have a partnership with the county.
Yeah.
That they should be, at the table with us. And so if you're asking for authority to also, address that, and I know there may be some limitations in our ability to do that, but I think it's very important that we pursue that. I'm kind of upset that maybe we haven't done that yet, but I want the county to be with us, arm in arm, taking on all the responsibilities we do, and because the vast majority of the valley is county unincorporated area. So I have some other comments, but I do think it's the most important. I agree with the idea that we have to address homelessness, and but I think there's a whole rainbow of solutions. And I'm glad that the mayor is going to open up, the discussion a little broader for the community to weigh in and get answers about what some of those solutions are. I also want to say that I place a very high value for a homeowner having the peace and tranquility that they believe they need. It's a very difficult balancing thing for us to do, but I'm not, who should be vilified or whatever. I don't fault anyone who says I'm concerned about my home and my family.
I agree.
And I also don't fault the people that say that it's the risk involved is being exaggerated. But each person has their own sense of values in their home, and I think we need to, it's part of what we do as council people, that we need to address that concern. And I guess my last, comment is that what happens after the 30? Because we've kind of earmarked 30 people, who are going to benefit, from the tent town or cabin village. But I know I've had people, talk to me about the homeless that are, in their neighborhoods, in a less of a formal, structured type of circumstance. Well, what are our plans financially to address them, or are we just going to address the 30 and then say, no, that we've done our job, and we need to discuss that. If we're talking about homelessness, we should talk not just about this tent village. We should be talking about the community, the entire community.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Okay, those are my comments.
I would like to, if you have a chance to get into that further conversation with the county to say, how does partnership work? I welcome that 100%. And Mr. Alameda, I would suggest that there has been a lot of really great comments here tonight about looking at other cities that are doing things like this and potentially doubling the expense and then seeing what does the model do just to try it. That seems reasonable enough to check out, but you heard it all here too. So yeah, I would like to see that, but thank you for the really fantastic detail on that. I appreciate it very much. Yep.
Yeah. I was just going to actually say the same thing, that if we could, I believe it was it Lori who made the comment about checking with the city of Alameda or other. I mean, I know Kimberly has examples from Santa Barbara, but I think if we could get a realistic sense of what other cities are doing, that would be helpful to bring into the conversation too. I'm very much in support of, I mean, you all, I've said it openly, but I'm very much in support of the project. I'm very much in support of helping the residents of Tent Town. But I'm also wanting to make sure that we are doing this, that what we are creating is a win-win for the community, for all members of the community, and for the city. And I want to just say that Raul talked about capital campaigns versus general funds, and so having come from a nonprofit background, I have that same experience. So yes, so if I would like to make a motion to authorize the city manager to proceed with the operational funding agreement with the County of Ventura, and for staff to come back with more research about Dignity Moves model and how we could make this work.
I'd second that.
Can I add a friendly amendment that the city manager, look into partnership agreements and include that with his discussions?
Yes,
Great.
I'll accept that too.
Yes, wonderful.
With just discussions, and then you'll bring the information back. That's good.
I think that's all we could do at this point.
Yeah, any future agreement, once negotiated by the city manager, would come to the city council for public review and comment and approval in public, either on its own or is more likely together with the project consideration as well.
I think we're hearing very well what the council and the community are intending. So I think we're all on the same page there.
So if I
Yes.
could,
Yeah.
I also, I know that it's very difficult to get a definitive answer from the county, but at some point we need to know what the county's willing to do and what they're not willing to do, and leaving it ambiguous just keeps the question open. So, my druthers would be to get something agreed upon, even if it's not everything that you want. So for instance, if it's Proposition 1 money and it's mental health, and they have the ability to provide mental health, and as Mr. Alvarado said, that's more than half the cost, they would get, we would be granted the money from Proposition 1, but it would go back to them in order to do what we need to do. That to me seems like a win-win, and indeed, if it is 50%, there you go. So that would be where I would start with them, and I would look to get a definitive answer on something. So, and the mental health services seems to me to be the most likely and the best bet for a partnership. Once again, I think people have mentioned this, the state gave Ojai the money. Talk to the county, see what they'll go for. So that's really all I have to say sort of about this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That would placate, what you said will placate a lot of concerns expressed, what the agreement's going to be, even if it's not everything we want, knowing what it is.
And it can be, I still think that people who want everything in place, including a cost model, it's not a realistic way that these projects are done. I wish it were, but I think times have changed in how we move forward. And so I don't have that deep commitment to knowing exactly how much money these things are going to cost. I would say, if you want to throw something out there, find out how much TOT we expect to get from the El Roblar. You know, and do we think that there's anything that we could pull from there into this? So there are untapped, you know, TOT funding sources that will be coming our way, and would the community be willing to commit to a certain portion of that?
Yeah.
And would that satisfy people? There's a way to deal with it, and I think we've heard the suggestion that, you know, a lot of the inequality around housing is a result of the tourism, not entirely, but so there's a certain poetic justice in that. And I would be willing to say, okay, 20% of the TOT that comes from the El Roblar, if this is the last, you know, this is all we have, then that's what we do with it. That's what we commit to do with it.
Thank you.
We expect quite a bit of money to come in from them. So that would be yet another way to figure out where we could get committed money from.
Thank you. I think we're ready to have a call.
Mayor, I'm seeking a second to this motion.
I seconded it.
Okay, thank you. I'll recite the motion back for everybody.
Please. Thank you.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lang, second Mayor Gilman, to approve the recommendation as written and to direct staff to return with research on the Dignity Moves model and project feasibility, with a friendly amendment to direct the city manager to pursue partnership agreements with the County of Ventura.
Thank you.
Roll call. Councilmember Rule.
Yes.
Councilmember Whitman.
Sorry.
Was
that for me?
Yeah. Councilmember Whitman.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Gilman.
Yes.
Councilmember Mang.
I just need clarification. I'm sorry. So that was just for saying that he can go and talk with the behavioral health. It's not the cost model.
Could you please repeat that
tonight for information, and then they're going to come back with more information.
Yeah, we're just accepting the report as opposed to taking action on the cost model report.
And directing the city manager to
And
negotiate
then we're
a future
directing-
agreement with
yeah.
the county to return for council and public review, to include asking the county for a straight answer on what they're willing to partner with us on.
And then
You're not approving a budget if that's
Okay.
what you're
okay.
thinking.
So we'll do yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Lang.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. So may we move the motorcycle officer to item number 1 next week? Before we get the chief of police on our, you know what? Okay. With that, let's move on. Any reports of any kind, or are we adjourned? Is there anything to say?
I think because it's a special meeting.
Because it's a special meeting, I don't have that on my agenda.
Right, because we did that last time.
Okay. Then, meeting adjourned. Thank you all for toughing this out.